Hello, welcome back to Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how are we doing this week, baby?
Oh, Jeff, the night is dark and full of terrors, but that doesn't bother me. I'm down here in the frozen north. Don't worry. I know it looks expensive. It's faux. And I'm settled in and ready to talk about the experience that was the latest from Gorillaz. We're talking The Mountain this week. But Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to talk about this album because I have, spoiler alert, news alert, however you want to say it, I have not been like ever that into the Gorillaz. Like there's plenty of Gorillaz songs that I've listened to. Obviously, Feel Good Inc. is everywhere all the time. So there's plenty of Gorillaz music that I've listened to and liked, and like Damon Albarn's other stuff I've listened to and liked. But I'm not sure other than this album, like how much Gorillaz I've like really dived in and listened to a bunch of. I know like he had the song with Bad Bunny on that album. And didn't we did a Gorillaz album on this?
We did Cracker Island, yeah.
Like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or something, right?
Two, maybe three.
Yeah, and that I feel like that album, I remember saying it felt almost like a compilation album. Like it felt like kind of a series of singles versus this album felt very cohesive to me. Like felt like there was a very I don't know, central sound, central theme. Like there was obviously variation in all of that stuff, but to me it just felt like it started hitting a note and stayed right in that pocket the whole time. For an over an hour long like album, I felt like this one moved right along just fine.
And I, quite frankly, was more aware of the length, but not in an unpleasant way. It felt every second of the hour plus that it was in a good way, because it's one of those albums. If I'd gotten anything less, I'd be like, you left me wanting more. They split the difference between I've been oversaturated and I could have done with more. And I won't sit here and say that I'm a huge Gorillaz expert at all. Being friends with Mitchell, Sweet Mitch, you're going to listen to a lot of Gorillaz. You're going to listen to a lot of Plastic Beach specifically, and it's great. And I agree with you. Like our take on Cracker Island was, hey, these are all good songs. 2 or 3 maybe aren't our bag, but it does kind of feel like B-sides that were cobbled together with a couple new songs to fill something out. So not bad at all, but very much rose to the level of the expectation that you had based on the singles, which is like, it's going to be a good Gorillaz album. This, for me, I would say, if you're not into Gorillaz, has absolutely zero appeal to you. Yes. If you've never heard, if you know them and you're not into them, definitely not. If you've never heard of Gorillaz, don't start here. It's definitely quintessentially their sound, but it is, for me, like bordering on a concept album. Because like for me, the distinction of a concept album is something like The Wall, where you've got the story. Jesus Christ Superstar started off as a concept album. Like we know what it is. This is not necessarily like a narrative that's running through it so much as there's like a thematic through line in this, and brand new sounds and some really dark themes. And yet it maintains everything that makes Gorillaz: the beats, the production, Albarn's kind of dreamy when he's portraying the character 2D, that like dreamy, recognizable voice. It's all there, but it's got a new coat of paint, and it's kind of wild. And I'm looking forward to dissecting this. What did you think of this compared to some of the stuff like Clint Eastwood or Feel Good Inc. or whatever else you're familiar with?
So there was no Feel Good Inc. on this album. And I think if that's what people come in expecting is like the most popular Gorillaz songs that exist, if they're expecting to find that here, they're not going to find it. But what they are going to find is every bit of the kind of genius that created those songs in the first place. I think this is a lot more thematically heavy than Clint Eastwood or Feel Good Inc. ever was. I think having somebody like, Del the Funky Homo Sapien on Feel Good Inc. is somebody that is, has a certain type of voice, is very upbeat, moved right along. It was a very danceable kind of record. It was a club song. It played all over the place in dance clubs. Like, it was a very, very popular song for that. Like, again, you're not going to find that here. You're going to find just as much talent. You're going to find just as much production value here as you ever have gotten from him in the past. But he does it a different way. And you were kind of explaining to me before we started the recording, kind of how he chose the collaborators on this album. Because every single, Gorillaz, obviously he has collaborators on basically everything he does, but for this project. But on this album, it's just, there's like at least, I think there's only two or three songs that have one. Every other song has at least two or three or four even.
Yeah, there are a lot of collaborators on this, living and dead. So, like, for a little lore backstory fill in here, Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett, the illustrator and cartoonist who is one of the two people that came up with the concept of Gorillaz, they went on this trip to India. Their dads died within 10 days of each other. One of them, I want to say, it was Damon Albarn, scattered his dad's ashes in the Ganges River. And from there, I think being in India, being on the like highly spiritual experience, experiencing this like very terrible, tragic spiritual thing of losing their dads within 10 days of one another while they're on this trip. Some stuff is just too crazy to be true sometimes, and yet it actually happens. So they kind of like turned this into a meditation on grief and transformation and suffering, and specifically the idea in Buddhism of samsara, which is like the cycle of suffering through reincarnation. And they took a lot of creative inspiration from India, and I think it was like the perfect place to be dialed into a spirituality that's unlike what you get around here. Like, somewhere there's a universe where Gorillaz made like a Christian rock album. You know what I mean? Influenced by, the wonderful traditions of gospel and stuff like that. I think it's a spiritual experience unlike what we're accustomed to. So it takes on this kind of larger than life mystical quality while still wrestling with these very heavy themes of grief, isolation, death, loss, mourning, all that. And one very cool thing that they did with this is they decided they wanted to let their deceased collaborators have a part of the dialogue in this album that is about death. They wanted them in on the conversation. So they used archival recordings and sometimes like songs that weren't used of a lot of people. The actor Dennis Hopper, you have Bobby Womack. You have a bunch of people on here who basically, they live again through this recording, like incorporating them into the dialogue. I think is like, it adds a whole new dimension to it, and it's genius. The only person they couldn't get was Lou Reed. He specifically said, when I'm dead, you can't use my shit. So they fed him through a vocoder, and he did it as like HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. But I think it could be gimmicky to be like, we have dead people on the songs, but it really was kind of a trip back through Gorillaz to its inception up through now, and sort of dealing with what happens when you lose your family, your friends. You start to doubt everything you knew about your spirituality and your concept of life after death. It's all of that, and it rocks, and it's packed into an hour. It's kind of a crazy thing. Like, not to like oversell it, I guess, because people, your mileage may vary on Gorillaz, but for me, this was like their sound and an incredible concept done so much justice and married to like really put it over the top.
Yeah, and I think they, I loved, speaking of the folks that they use that have passed away, Proof on the Manifesto. I mean, absolutely fantastic. I mean, I used to listen to like Proof back with the D12 days and stuff. Like, I always felt like he, other than Eminem, was the best rapper like in that whole group. I think severely underrated, died way too young. For Dennis Hopper, they should have absolutely used the speech from Speed. I don't know why they didn't.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
Yeah, that would have been a much better use of Dennis Hopper. One of his villain roles for sure should have been used for that, I think.
Yeah, use Dennis Hopper and Blue Velvet on your song. That would have been great.
Yeah, I think that was if you could say there was any missed opportunity, that would be the one I think there would be. I loved the God of Lying with Idols. Loved it because I mean I love Idols. Like I've become a really big fan of them over the last couple of years, but just it just felt so dark and like foreboding. And I think that I can't ever remember the lead singer's guy's name for Idols, but it just I just feel like it he just has such a weight to his voice, and he can do songs like Never Fight a Man with a Perm, where it's like very funny and kind of tongue in cheek and all that kind of stuff, but he can also do songs like this where that this is like supposed to kind of tear at your heart a little bit. And I really love that there is such a variation of styles of music. Like you have disco on here, and then you have like kind of the 80s like almost synth wave type of music on here. There's a whole mess of influences that he's pulling from on this. It's not just it's not Feel Good Inc. It's not, you don't hear that like really poppy sort of beat. Like there's things like that you can find here and there, but I feel like all of the music is just to get you from lyric to lyric. I think this is the most like lyrical forward type of thing I think I've heard from Gorillaz, maybe ever. This is the most like thematically dense thing I've heard from Gorillaz, like probably ever. It just, to me, it hit all those right notes. And again, when you like, we talked about it on the Mitski episode, like sometimes it's like at a certain point, like, are they going to miss? And like, I guess you could say Cracker Island, like a miss in that it wasn't a thematically cohesive album. It just felt like kind of a collection of things. You know, this was a big swing. Doing this, like, I don't know that I'd ever heard Gorillaz do this style of music before, but the first song, is like, is that a sitar, right? Is the instrument they have in there?
Actually, it
Some
might,
very like
yeah.
Eastern sounding, style music. And I'm like, oh boy, where are we going with this?
Ravana Hatha
Is that the
is
name
the
of
name
the
of the
instrument?
instrument.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's similar to a sitar. I don't know. Someone can tell me in the comments what that might be. But it's, you hear that and you're like, oh boy, where are we going with this? Because is this Damon Albarn gonna like kind of crawl up his own ass a little bit,
Right.
like he's been wont to do in the past, here and there? Or is this going to be something where they've really had a breakthrough and this is going to make sense? And I think maybe it's that experience of taking that trip and experiencing that loss. And you also feel a lot of love in this album. And there was a Jimmy Carr, the comedian that is just like very hit or miss for me. Like when he's being very mean, he's very funny. But when he's just, he can also be a little bit, just wears on you a bit. But he had a great quote where he said, grief is the price we pay for love. And I think, there is clearly a lot of grief in this album, but there's also a lot of love in this album. Like the idea that you're going to give Proof another time to shine, that you're going to pull in Dennis Hopper, like of all people. Was he a big Gorillaz fan or something? Like, why Dennis Hopper?
I couldn't tell you. No
Yeah,
idea.
just felt like giving him some shine. Maybe they loved his movies or something like that. But it's just, you have Johnny Marr several times throughout this. Black Thought was incredible in both appearances on this album. He always has been. Yassine Bey, FKA Mos Def, fantastic on this album. I think there's clearly so much care and thought like put into each of these things. And I know you can have a criticism of of electronic music and all this kind of stuff, and maybe you don't give the same shine to a Damon Albarn as you give to a Beatles or somebody like that. But it takes a different kind of genius to make things like this. Maybe he wouldn't do a 4-piece rock band type of thing, although he did do Blur. I guess that doesn't, so he got clearly is capable of that too, I suppose. But it takes a very specific kind of person that can create something like this using the same instruments that someone else might be able to use the exact same and have it sound like this instead. Like that's what makes Gorillaz special and keeps them from being like the joke cartoon band, because they have like animated monkeys in their music videos. Like it keeps them from being like that sort of like kind of joke band, or they're just a pop band. Like it gives it more substance. Albums like this, I feel like, are legacy building kind of albums for a project like Gorillaz.
And there's an inherent risk to being like the virtual band, and that being a gimmick that wears out pretty quickly, because at first it creates intrigue, like who's the actual band behind this. You go to concerts and they're playing behind the scrim and they're backlit, and like cartoons are being projected and stuff like that. But really, instead of it being a gimmick, by like really protecting it and steering into it, they created the persona, they created the buy-in. So you don't even you suspend your disbelief before you walk through the door, and particularly with the concert experience. And it's like, okay, you nailed that one. And then to pick up on something you were just saying, it it could have been like very, very gimmicky to include the inspiration from Indian music and Southeast Asian music and these different sounds. Like you hear the instrument. What did I call it? I said it was called.
No.
I said it was called the Ravana Hatha. You hear that kick in, and that it could go either way. A lesser band would have steered into that kind of superficiality. It's a problem we've seen on a couple albums this year, where they think the recreation of a sound is a substitute for inspiration from that sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these traditions are like displayed very lovingly here, different singing styles, different cultures, different traditions incorporated, and it's great. And you can tell it's done with a genuine respect and marries perfectly with the concept. You can tell that their trip to India was something sincere and came out of like genuine pathos as a result of losing their dads while they were over there. Controversial take incoming, but the Beach Boys and the Beatles and all these other people that got into transcendental meditation and like go to India and meet the guru and all that kind of stuff, it gave us some interesting music. But the idea that like they brought some spiritual awakening back with them and we caught a whiff of it off their music, it was an aesthetic thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was an aesthetic thing. You're doing LSD, doing Cox, and I'm sorry, I hate to say like someone's if they had a profound spiritual experience, that's great. But we were certainly just kind of catching a vibe based on what they brought back. I don't think it altered anyone's personality to such a point that drove the music. It just became like, George, can you learn the sitar? And so a lot of that stuff kind of rings hollow to me. A lot of the post-India stuff where they like really tried to incorporate that into the music rings hollow to me. It can be gimmicky and it can be like culturally exploitative at a certain point. And I never got that sense from this, because you are including artists from this part of the world, from these traditions, and they're breathing life into stuff that's very, very close to you. And on some songs, you can have the living and the dead. You've got these living artists who take on these different like musical, cultural experiences. And then you've got people who they're taking old recordings of someone like Proof and creating this whole new thing. It's life, it's death. Like if you really want to be like hipster grad school term paper about it, you'll find all of these parallels of life and death and the cycle of suffering. It's all in there. It's all very intentional, and it's all reflected in this like very big, very lush, so beautifully produced, beautifully mixed and mastered. It is just in your ears. It fills your senses. I was shocked. I was really, really shocked by this. Did not expect to like it this much. Did not expect to get as much out of it, to feel spiritually moved by it, to dial into it and go, I'm all in on this. This isn't just I'm having fun listening to bangers. I'm sewed in. The music is great. The themes are very, very powerful, done in an effective way. It's the perfect marriage of that kind of rock and world music. It's a hard thing to pull off, and they stuck the landing.
Yeah, and I think, I love that you brought up like the Beatles and the Beach Boys and obviously Ravi Shankar, in that whole experience of like how they became influenced by that. And I think they were desperately searching for the next sound, and I think they were willing to find it wherever they could. And that's just happened to be where they found it. Now, I don't know that there was ever a whole lot of authenticity with how they felt truly about the experience over there. other than it was like, okay, we can, this is something these people will like. So let's bring that back. I think the experience that Damon Albarn, you'll have to remind me what the other guy's name.
Jamie Hewitt, sorry.
Jamie Hewitt. So when they go on this trip, right, and they're in India and they're experiencing this grief, they're experiencing this kind of spiritual journey with this loss that they've had. It might be that they felt India was the thing that cradled them through that experience. And so in that it creates, it's a lot more authentic when they use Indian instruments and Indian musicians to make these songs, because that was the place where they had that spiritual moment where maybe they got past the grief a little bit and saw the beauty in that person's life again. Because there's always that time where it's like all you can think about is what it's like to have lost them, and you can't quite get back to thinking about what it was like to have had them. And I think maybe India is what helped bring that back to them. And I think it's beautiful that they were able to use that music, have it still sound like the Gorillaz, but clearly just pay tribute to that experience that they had. It could have so easily felt so gimmicky and just never ever did. It could have so easily felt gimmicky when they just straight up were ripping off like Flock of Seagulls, essentially, with like some of the kind of synth lines that they were using in some of these songs towards the middle of the album. The song that he used the proof verse on is not the type of music I ever would have thought I'd hear Proof rap over, let alone any other rapper, really. So it's just so interesting, the mix of things that they brought together. And like Johnny Marr, people would know from the Smiths and Modest Mouse. And while I guess like Damon Albarn did play in Blur, so like he's attached to rock music as well. Like you wouldn't expect to see Johnny Marr be such a kind of integral part of a Gorillaz album. That's what's so interesting, I think, about what Damon Albarn can do, is drawing all these influences, and I think his ear is really good for hearing the way things are supposed to sound. It may not, like, I just don't imagine I would ever be able to come up with song structures like he did for this using the instrumentation that he had. Because it's a mix of that live instrumentation from having these other musicians come in, and his classic like Gorillaz like little Casio keyboard sounds as simple as can be, but you could never come up with that yourself. It's just really, really interesting how he continues to grow in a style of music that not a lot of other people could ever find growth in.
Yes, yeah, I would agree. Growth, album over album, sometimes perhaps growth laterally, but this definitely like colossal. And whatever they do next is not going to be like this. This isn't like where Arctic Monkeys totally pivoted their sound. And then we got Tranquility Base, which I loved, and The Car, which I did not, and I don't think you were into either. This isn't like a total sea change, but it's definitely an evolution and probably a one-off. But I think like you, and they have their cake and eat it too on this, because you can get these long, like The Mountain, you can kind of get these long, very lush, very music forward, incorporating like Rajasthani folk music into it. But then you get, as the lead single, they do The Happy Dictator, which is such a like incredibly quirky song about the cult of personality rule in Turkmenistan. Their dictator, what's his name? Niyazov, I think.
Oh, I thought you were talking. I was going to say Orban, but that's Turkey. Never mind.
Orban, yeah, Orban's Hungary.
Yeah. Hungary.
Erdogan is Turkey, and then I think his name is like Sapor Murat Niyazov.
I'm just an ignorant American.
Yeah, just a simple Texan over there. So like you can have your fun, quirky Gorillaz song that incorporates some of these new world music elements to it, but then you have like these very serious meditations, and again, the buy-in to the gimmick is there, so you're not ever sitting there being like, oh yeah, I'm listening to the cartoon gorilla people do the song. And it's like, it's easier when you're taking it as a piece of music versus like they released a companion film that goes with it. It's different than like seeing it live with the projections, like just listening to it and taking it for the composition that it is before you. You have the buy-in, you take that ride. Like, the music can back up whatever they do with it. Very, very spiritually profound. There are some fantastic lyrics on this. Specifically, got to shout some out here from the last. Oh, shoot. Close that tab. From the last song.
The Sad God.
Oh, my God. This computer sucks. Yes. So the Sad God, it's this wonderful, like, repetitive part. I gave you love to fill old glory. I gave you dreams. You wrote the story. I gave you white sails to reach the sun. I gave you atoms. You built a bomb. Now there is nothing, and I have gone. No more mountains, no more song, no more prayers sent up into space. Only screens left to see your face. The idea of inhabiting that POV of a sad God, that one line specifically, I gave you atoms, you built a bomb. That, to me, encapsulates in that one line all of the pathos that's in this. And it goes beyond, like, the literal representation of a sad God, whoever that God is. And I think it can be distilled down to, like, familial disappointment. You're disappointed in your parents. You're disappointed in your son. Whatever it is, just this idea that, like, you've given so much of yourself to someone and then they corrupt and pervert this gift. And particularly the order of the natural universe, like atoms. I put these here. They're amazing, wonderful things. They're in, you wouldn't believe at what atoms are capable of and what they do. And you built a bomb that's meant to destroy life. It's depressing to think about. The first time I heard it, it smacked me in the face. It's like, whoa. There's that kind of lyrical quality all throughout the album, and there's that kind of pathos all throughout the album. Again, I think it's a pretty incredible lift. I think it's very different from a lot of Gorillaz, and yet fits neatly in with their canon. This was a 10 out of 10 for me. This was a 10 out of 10.
So I was wondering, I was thinking that you were going to like this album a lot. Like, when I was listening to it, I was like, this is going to tickle the right spot for Alex for sure. For me, it's a 9 out of 10. Not quite perfect. Just, I think the length of the album, I think it just didn't feel perfect to me. It felt excellent to me. So, I don't want to take away, I think a 9 out of 10, certainly something to be proud of on this podcast. I think with the new grading system, I'm trying to be a little bit more reasonable with the takes. It's a lot easier to really get a little more nuanced with how you really felt about an album, because you got more of a rating to pick from, I think, the way we do it now. I think this is probably the best thing I've ever heard from the Gorillaz. I think Feel Good Inc. is an excellent song, obviously, and Clint Eastwood's an excellent song. But as far as just a piece of work, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard from the Gorillaz. So I hope that they come out with something that I can consider a 10. Till then, they're going to have to settle for 9 from me, a 10 from Alex. And Alex, where would people be able to find out what we thought about the Cracker Island album?
Y'all, you can find Cracker Island. You can find Mitski. You can find Sturgill Simpson. You can find a whole lot of stuff at that cyber treasure trove we call youtube.com/C/out of that line. Gang, find ourselves here once again. It's me, dear friends, alive and kicking. Well, alive anyway. That's from the film Wild Wild West. I unabashedly love that. I've referenced it. Now I'm working. I have referenced many, many quotes from that film. I had the VHS. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Movie fucking stinks.
Set the record on Just Dance.
Set the record. Desperado, baby. Number 1. Just Dance. Let me take you to the Wild Wild West.
No, you don't want nada.
None of this. Don't make me do the whole thing. Don't make me do the whole thing. Maybe I will someday in a video if you guys want. I'll do the dance. I'll put on a Stetson and I'll do the Just Dance dance to it. Do the whole thing. I'll do it in front of a green screen with the mechanical spider behind me. I'll do it. That's besides the point. Like, it's only music adjacent. The point in bringing up Wild Wild West is I know I have referenced it in other episodes. Couldn't tell you which ones. So I guess you'll just have to go and watch every single one we've ever done. to find the treat. You watch it start to finish. Guys, what else are you doing? Bitcoin is a scam. Your NFTs are worthless. You guys are unks, okay? Like, let's just get that out of the way. Your old dusty asses need something to do that's fucking relevant, that's fucking interesting, that's changing the way people think about music and music criticism on the internet, okay? This is not a difficult decision to make. You go to youtube.com/C/out on that line. You subscribe to the channel immediately. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Then you hit the bell so that notifications are on so that when we drop a new episode, you know about it. It's right there. You don't have to go looking. Bam, right to you. And that's when you hit the thumbs up and go, I like that. I like that level of service. I like how easy you guys have made it to entertain me. And for the love of God, you can hype the video. You can share the video with a friend. But if you leave a comment, God love you. God love you. What'd you think of this album? What would you like us to do next? What other thoughts are percolating in that little pea mind of yours? Let us know. We're damn glad to have you. The family is growing, and so are we at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
I will rue the day that we get popular enough to get actual sponsors, and you have to read copy that really hems you in, and you can't do those sorts of things anymore. I'm gonna really rue the day when that happens. So until that day, folks, until next time.